Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another episode of the Humble Climb podcast. I've got a good mate of mine on today, a guy by the name of Nick Gieschen. Funny story, we actually met when he was looking to buy a house, and that's how we've become quite close friends. And he's a really, really cool character, and you'll be able to see it throughout today's episode. He's a leading AFL player manager and doing amazing things in his field. I wanted to get him on because he's one of the most humble and generous guys with his time that you'll ever meet, and even better that he's just from the local area of Oakley. So, Nick Giesch, welcome on board.
Great to be here, mate.
Thanks for coming on, mate. And I've got to also, before I forget, mate, I make sure that I always start off and finish off with a few of the sponsors that are getting behind the Humble Climb. So, as always, can't thank enough, Gigi Hair and Kids, Marissa down there. So you got two little ones, don't you?
Yep.
Well, make sure you go and take them down to Marissa, just here in Berkeley Street, Huntingdale. Get them a nice trim.
Yep.
And, mate, she works wonders with my hair.
Yep.
So it's fantastic. B&A Car and Truck Repairs, as always, they're doing amazing things in the karting space. And hopefully little Ava continues to grow the way that she is. Medical Aesthetic and Renew Skin Clinics. So when the time comes, mate, and you're starting to get a few of those frail lines coming through, a bit of Botox, why not? We all need it. Tammer the DJ, he's got an event coming up of mine for my 30th, so I can't wait to get him involved. So if you've got a Connor sports management function and you need a really good DJ, mate, Tammer's your guy. And of course, the last two, the big Bonza Snowballs. They're going to take these home to the kids after school, mate. And they'll love them. Yeah, straight after school, mate. A bit of a pep me up as a snack, bit of sugar. Thanks for coming. And lastly, Water Wall Prints. And for all your sporting memorabilia, which I'm sure you've got a fair bit of, you obviously need to hit it in the bedroom so you remind yourself of how good you were once upon a time at the Red Legs. And, mate, so a massive, massive thank you to these guys for always getting behind us. But let's get into it. Nick Giesch, welcome on board again. Thank you for coming on.
No, it's good to be here, mate.
Mate, it's we had a funny journey. We went, 3-4 years ago when you were searching for a house, and you didn't actually end up buying it,
no.
and which because of COVID and everything. And then you ended up, we just stayed in touch, and we've almost become really close mates now. So
I didn't buy the house because you wanted too much money.
Mate, I'll let him make a negotiation off you. So, mate, it's awesome that you've come on, and we've been talking about this for a little while, and I've always wanted to, I find it such an enthralling space, the player management. I don't actually know if you know this. When I finished year 12, so I enrolled in to do a sports management course. And I ended up getting some work experience with Paulie Kudafides from Blue Rock. And they're a very small boutique firm. I still speak to Paulie, and he's like, they're great guys. And but we never really, I realized with sports management that you need a lot of time dedicated, and also I think it's a bit harder when you're a smaller fish and you're competing against some of the, hypothetically Connor sports management where you are now. Mate, how did you get into it?
Oh, mate, it was actually quite random. So I was studying at uni and always had a bit of a footy background through my father Jeff, who played at Bulldogs, coached Richmond, and then growing up with two brothers. Dad was a lifelong footy coach, so it was always in the blood. Was going through uni, and then an opportunity came up for me to move over to Perth to play footy and have life over there. Yeah, yep. And I remember it was the year that I was 21 and I was looking to come back to Melbourne because I'd been over there and I realised my elite footy days were probably done. So I thought, come back to Melbourne. And
were you a chance of getting picked up?
Oh, this was 20 years ago, but I played in the NAB League and all the stuff that the kids go through, the school footy, and had 2 years of AFL after NAB League, a year in the Waffle, but by that stage I was 21 and I was looking forward to just getting back and getting into some work, finishing off uni, and then still playing footy, but probably not like my dream of AFL was done and dusted by then. And then I was over in Perth, and an opportunity came up to come and play back in the Eastern Footy League with a team called East Ringwood. Through that, I met a great person called Dan Richardson, who was at that stage sort of heading up Elite Sports Properties. And
is he Richmond's list?
Well, he was,
yeah.
Okay. So Dan was a really prominent player agent. From there, he went to Richmond through the Premiership era, went to Essendon. Yep. Then now he's in charge of the AFL umpires. So Dan was great enough to give me an opportunity. I moved to Adelaide in 2007 to work as a player agent. So fresh out of uni, didn't know what I was doing, but was lucky enough to meet a guy called Justin Reid, who was the Adelaide agent who sort of ran the office over there in Adelaide. He took me under his wing, taught me everything that he knew. I'm so indebted to him. Like he's such a great man. He's now the list manager of the Adelaide Crows, who are doing great things. And Reedy was just taught me all the little things and all the basics. And I'm so grateful that I had a year with Reedy. And after that, I moved back to Melbourne, and that was me, 15 years ago, and here I am today.
That's awesome, mate. That's awesome. Well, we talk about humble, and it's one thing that you are. So it's I wanted to ask you a question as to whether you regret leaving the Mazda dealership.
My older brother Jared is, he has a great story. So he finished his uni, he went did marketing at Melbourne RMIT, and I think during the course they do a period of time when they go and work in a business. So he did his time at Mazda. So he would have been 19, 20, and he's still there 20 years later. He's director of sales. He's basically second in charge of Mazda Australia, and I think he's been groomed for sort of the top gig. Travels to Japan once a month.
Yeah, right.
So I myself and my younger brother Rye did some while I was going through uni, mate, trying to make a buck. I was doing a bit of sales. Like I'd be the one that, like, if you buy a new car, I'd be the annoying person that would ring and say, "Hey, how was your experience out of 10?" And like, it was. Do you know what? I was there for 2 or 3 years.
It taught you so much,
and it did, because it taught me, like, the cold call, which in our industry, like, it's become better because as you get more experience, you tend to know the people that you're calling. But certainly from from working at Mazda, doing all the phone calls and having the courage to do that, and we were set targets. Like we had to do 10 calls an hour, and I think those skills of just communicating on the phone and having targets, and it helped me. Like, it's funny, I've always looked back and thought that time at the Mazda dealership helped me, but I don't think I was cut out for selling cars.
That's where I had my light bulb moment with real estate. I know I talked about it previously. Like, I was working at a car dealership selling finance, so bad at it because just was, and we just hardly had any customers, and I started auctioneering off a car to our staff just as a joke, and then a week later I've accepted a job in real estate. Like, but it is, man. And I remember back then, even at the car dealership, where I don't know if you can resonate to it, but it was my first sort of interaction with clients of handling rejection.
Yep.
Because obviously in both of our industries, you're going to hear a no from time to time, or majority of the time you're going to hear a no versus a yes. Yep. So it's good, and obviously and I love the fact that obviously, yes, you've got the surname, and your dad Jeff, being the Richmond coach, and also was he the umpire director of the AFL? Yeah. You've never once ridden the coattails of that, and of course, it's always going to open up a slight door, but I think the work's up to you to do as well.
Yeah, Dad had a great life in footy. Yeah. Was a country football star, and played for Footscray and then ended up coaching. But it's not like it's Kevin Sheedy's son or Ted Whitten's son or Wayne Kerr, Gary Ablett's son. Like, it's
not a free pass, is it?
It's probably like Dad's quite well known in the country, and obviously like the Richmond people. And he had 2.5 years at Richmond where he did some great things, but it's not, like it.
When did he coach Richmond? I'm just trying to see if I was
90. Born. So we moved to Melbourne at the end of 1996. He was at Geelong, and then he moved to Melbourne in 97. Was reserves coach, took the senior job for the last, I think, 5 games of 97, then coached 98, 99, and then went on to the umpires in 2000.
We'll have to let your dad know, due to the fact that I was 5 and 6, I don't remember him, but because I was born in 93, obviously. So, but mate, it's awesome because, as I said, you've always been where it needs to be from a point of view of humbleness, and always just taking my annoying calls. So it's awesome, and I love the fact that obviously an AFL player manager, like for me, that was my dream. Coming out of school, so you're literally living my dream. Don't get me wrong, I'm wrapped with real estate. Like it actually suits me to a T. But and especially working locally. But mate, it was fun. One of the things that I always wanted to do was AFL player management, and I quickly found out when I was doing a bit of work experience with Paulie from Blue Rock that that if you're not that big fish, and if you don't have that time in there, it is so hard to break the mold. I've got a mate of mine now that's coming on, funnily enough, on the podcast the next couple of weeks. You might know him as well, Damien Kavka.
Oh yeah,
and ex-player from West Coast. And mate, we didn't sign him back then. We didn't sign him, and we're still mates to this day, and now he's got a thriving electrical business and all that type of stuff. So he's going to be coming on. But
I actually know Cooter well. So he worked with George Harros, who's a great.
That's right, Ivanhoe boy
person. Yeah. And, great clubman. And so Cooter and I think I lived in McLeod when I first moved to Melbourne. Lived in McLeod, and we have some mutual friends, Frank Ciccone. If you're listening, mate.
Is he the hair guy?
Yeah, the hair guy. Yeah. So. I know Cooter well. He's a great guy.
He's an awesome guy, mate. And he's mate, they're just good people. And but I quickly realised that obviously it wasn't thing. So literally, mate, you're literally got my dream job, because I've got this little hidden talent, and it's I can name you any player on the list with the number jersey that they wear.
In the whole AFL.
Whole AFL.
Wow.
It's genuine. Like, that's genuinely my go-to. I'm obsessed with AFL. I study it. I love it. I don't know why. I'm a Richmond fan, but I don't really go to the games. I'll be honest with you. There's far too many stairs to walk, and I just can't be bothered. But mate, I'm an avid fan, so it's awesome. Talk me through your big breakthrough of your soul, signing your first player. Who was that? Do you remember it?
So I started in late 2007. So I guess in terms of signing the first player, my first draft was the 2008 national draft.
Okay. Richard Tamley?
No. 2008 was Tom Scar. No, that was 2009. And Jack Watts was pick one. I think Nick Nat was two. No, sorry, that was 2009. Yeah. Who was 2008? Anyway, it was the year that clubs could take 17-year-olds. So back in the day, now it's clubs have to take 18-year-old kids, but back when I first started, they could take one 17-year-old. So sort of draft them and then put them away. So my first few players that I ever, I guess, signed and were managing was like the Daniel Hannabury. Oh, yeah. I was playing footy at Norwood at the time, and Ryan Schoenmakers was playing there. Paul Piopolo, who they both ended up premiership players at Hawthorn.
Great European little mate of mine.
Yeah, so Luke Shuey. So there was a few guys from that draft that ended up becoming sort of key, like Dan and Luke and some of those boys were key clients. And to see Poppy and Ryan Schoenmakers, guys that I'd actually played a bit of footy with, go on and achieve success was awesome. And that rolled into 2009, and probably the Gary Rowan, Ben Cunnington, who were picked 5 and 6 in the draft, and there were some other boys. And how it works in our industry is you get on a bit of a roll, so all of a sudden you have 5 players. They've got mates that are coming through, the bottom age kids, and it sort of flows. And all of a sudden you've got 10, 15, 20, and then you've got a bit of a stable on your books, and it becomes a bit easier to. You've got a story to tell to parents, and I've been through this experience with this player, and I've had this player that's moved into state, and just the more experience that you gain, the more opportunities that you get. So it sort of started from there, really.
I love that. So 2008 national draft's your first one.
Yep.
And obviously now it's evolving. Yeah. Week in, week out, and you guys obviously at Connor Sports Management, which you've got some incredible people on your stables in general. I know yourself personally. You've got Ollie Wines, Brownlow medalist, Clayton Oliver from memory as well. A few of the North boys as well. You got the big Shees.
Yeah, the little Shees.
Little Shees. Yeah. I love what he's doing about it. Who's some of the other players that are in your personal stable as well?
So personally, Tom Barras from West Coast, who's best and fairest last year, who's a gun over there. We probably don't hear enough about him in Melbourne, but over there he's a gun. He was awesome in their premiership win. Dan Houston, Dan McStay, like Patrick Lipinski. Like there's
some really good scales.
But there's some good, and great people, like good, people that I've managed for a long time, and really value their friendship and their loyalty, and and I've been very lucky.
I've always had I read this thing about you the other day, and this is not pumping your tires, so it's not here to piss in your pocket. But I read this thing on the other day that it was you were the best up and coming. They said like youthful agent, player agent coming through the ranks, and that was one of the big things of you obviously joining CSM. It's probably the more true thing because you're just so personable. Have you found that you're sort of continuing to evolve yourself as a person, like things that you got to work on towards your everyday business, or let's just say, there's a particular kid out there that you've missed the opportunity of signing. Yep. Do you sort of study that and go back as to, okay, well, this is what I could have done better to not stuff up the next time?
Definitely. I think when you're young, like as you said before earlier, when you're young, you do hear more no than yes. Yeah. And it's all a part of the learning and growing, and it's disappointing. Like, and even there was a situation a year or two ago where I put like my heart and soul into signing this. I won't name the name,
of course,
but he's a great kid, great family, and I was probably, for 6 to 12 months, I was really
grinding away
having a crack. I just loved this kid, and I thought he was obviously a great player, but just felt like there was a great connection. And I remember when his dad called and said they were going with another agent, I was just gutted. Like even after 15 years, because you put so much time and investment into it, and it hurts for a split second, but then you move on and you wish the player all the best. And it's been great to see his little journey so far, but definitely always continuing to learn, and I'm lucky I've got some great people that I work with. Like Paul's just a gun, and obviously everyone knows the story of Paul. He's been around for a long time, and what he's done in the industry and what he continues to do. Robbie, who's Robbie's similar age to me, experience. His skill set is similar to mine but different. Like he's so just his mind, and he's always thinking about opportunities that we're different. I think that's what makes it work. But Robbie's a gun, and the girls at the office. But you're always learning. You're always looking to get better, because the industry's changing too. There's more companies. There's younger people. There's what I mean. Like you've got to keep up, and you've got to keep evolving yourself. Otherwise, you stand still. So
one of the big things that I always wanted to ask a player manager, if I thought, and it's not something that I ever knew, is how did you marketing opportunities for players? Do they come to you, or do you source them?
Bit of both. I mean, it depends on the player. Like Robbie manages Nick Dacos, and he's just he's such a great. Marketable. His footy's great. He's obviously got the family background.
So many suitors out there that would want to be having
clean cut. Like he's just a marketer's dream. So Robbie's actively looking for opportunities. There's times where people come to us. We've got some help in that regard too. But it depends on the player. Like not every player is marketable, because at the end of the day, the player's there's got to be value for the company that wants to look after the player. But but like in that regard, Robbie's thought process, and like he's got Bailey Smith. So Paul and Robbie manage Bailey Smith, and just and what they've done for Bailey and the opportunities and the way they've handled certain things that have happened in the past couple of years has been unbelievable. I've learned so much from that.
Well, you guys also, or CSM under the CSM umbrella, the Connor Sports Management umbrella, you guys have got one of my personal favourite players, who's Toby Green.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, I knew Toby when we were growing up a bit small, when we were younger, but I'd never, really hung out as much. But for me, I think he's the best in the league by far.
Yeah.
I just think he's not by far. I take that back, but I just think he's a super player.
Yeah. It's funny if you were picking one player to go and play in a grand final on this weekend. It's like even like his 200th game on the weekend, he was best on ground. They win down in Geelong. They were, probably given no chance to win, but he's always the one that gets them over the line. Like he's just so tough and he's so consistent.
I reckon and again, I just think I look at his whole journey. Mate, I'm trying pretty hard to get him on the humble climb, put it that way, right? And it's good. We got a lot of mutual mates, so it's awesome. But I look at his journey from where he started to what he's gone through, up, downs, incidences, to where he is now as a captain of GWS. And for me, he's probably leading I reckon at this stage he'd be All-Australian captain.
Yep.
He'd have to be in the conversation.
Him and Darcy Moore, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, Darcy Moore, amazing as well, for sure. So true. Like it's, I just find it incredible. And that's what I'm saying. You guys have got the stable of stables under your books, and you can see the reason why. I mean, I know you're based just down here locally in Malvern, so you're almost suburban to a degree, none of this big city swank, which is awesome. And again, I've had a lot of mates obviously come through the draft system. None of them, and a few of them that went through it, and they've always sort of said that CSM has got that layer of class. And I'm not just saying it because you're in front, but I guess success leaves clues to a degree. So it's awesome, obviously, when you came across, without naming into too much or going into too much detail. How difficult was that? I mean, obviously you were at a different organisation, and I don't want to be naming names or anything, but you were at a different organisation. You jumped across to CSM 3-4 years ago. Yep. How difficult of that was a time in your life?
It was pretty difficult, to be honest. Like, it was just something, an opportunity came up, and I'd always really respected Paul and Robbie, and I'd always rated CSM just from from afar, being competitors, and also knowing the way they work. And I was always curious, and there was a part of me that always, I always sort of had this, I'd love to work with Paul just because he has a crack and he's so hardworking. And anyway, an opportunity came up. Like, it was bloody hard. I mean, I'd been at the other place for a long time, 13 years, and it was just something that I couldn't say no to. And, you know, I wasn't really sure how to go about exiting somewhere, but I just did what I thought I had to do. And it ended up sort of being a bit of a process, but we've got through that now. And, awesome. and I'm really happy with the time I spent at the other company, but also really pumped to be where I am now. And you know, I learn a lot from the process, and it's like, it's business. It's hard. It's not always easy. I reckon it was
around the similar time when we met, when it was all sort of maybe happening. Yeah. It was, you had a lot going on. Obviously, you got, you know, kids and
and COVID, and like it was an interesting little start. But it's all worked out well, and I'm really settled. And
do you reckon if that I guess didn't play out potentially publicly the way that it did, but do you reckon that almost helped you to shape where you are today?
Certainly learnt a fair bit about myself, but also just business. Like, it's tough, and that was, I mean, that was, to be honest, like probably the toughest time I've been through, and there's reasons for that, and it was probably just the timing with like, as you said before, with not being able to work, having 2 kids, having COVID, not being able to leave the house, being under pressure, and just wondering, like, how is this going to get resolved?
And your routine changed so much from going and watching kids on a Saturday play footy, you know, to now you're locked up at COVID and you can't do anything. You got all this external noise going on, and you're looking for a new house as well. And I think, did you have a newborn then?
That was 2019. So I did actually. Yeah, he would have only been he was born in November, so a month old at that stage.
Crazy. I mean, and obviously you've come through it as to where you need to do it, and obviously the future is so bright to where you're at now. The players such as how do you manage the interstate players? And this is always something that I've always wondered. Is it a relationship or working out the boundaries with certain people, what they want and what they need?
The thing about the interstate players is you sign these kids before they're drafted. So, you know, Ollie Wines, the relationship starts before the draft, and then all of a sudden they go interstate. So, the players have no control over where they're drafted. So wherever they go, it's just a matter of getting on the plane, traveling, and then just making sure that you're in regular touch. And then also when the players are in Melbourne, so some of these boys are in Melbourne every 2 or 3 weeks playing AFL. So when they're here, making every effort to go and see them on a weekend or popping into the hotel. It doesn't have to be much, just making sure that you're touching base. But there's obviously, you know, the breaks and the time at the end of the season. And
like last week when we were meant to actually do this, like you were in Sydney.
I was in Sydney. So I was there from Tuesday till Thursday. On the Wednesday I had, you know, 3 Swans players, GWS list manager, GWS player, you know, dad of a young draftee this year. So there's always time to travel, and and it's good to get away and see the boys, you know, make the effort to go and see them interstate. I'm off to Adelaide this weekend.
I say, right, okay.
To go and watch some footy, but also to catch up with some players over there. So there's always the opportunity to travel and to make the effort to go and see them.
And is it sort of establishing, I guess, the boundaries with certain players, like hypothetically, I'm just using as an example here, but let's say Ollie Wines, who's in Adelaide, he's, you know, he's obviously, you know, he looks like he's got his head pretty well screwed on, so he probably doesn't need the constant attention. He just, mate, if you need anything, you know, I'm here type of thing, versus someone else like that might need to, I guess, a bit more assistance during their path. Is it sort of establishing that for you as well?
Oh, definitely. I mean, as players go through different stages of their career, so initially it's a lot of hands-on, drafted, welfare. Do they move? Where do they live? Who do they live with? Just probably more communication with their parents. Just making sure that, are there any issues? Are we across everything? Have we set up their finances the right way? And then obviously it rolls into the first contract, and then there's issues along the way that come up, injuries and all sorts of things. And then as they get older, such as an Ollie Wines, I mean, he's 20, 28, 29. He's, you know, stable. He's got everything in order. He's got a long contract. He's got, you know, his key relationships over in Adelaide. So there's probably not the need to be chatting on a daily basis, but when things come up, and there's the relationship there too. So it might be a text every now and again, a bit of banter, or how you going, or you okay, or how's the net? Just little things,
Whatever
just little
like Clayton Oliver at the moment, who's injured. Like obviously you're checking in with him a bit more due to the fact of his injury is
every player's different. Like some players, some players will have more contact with me, so they'll like everyone. They're all different, which makes the job interesting and exciting. And like Clary's so busy with. If you understood the amount of work that he does away from the footy club on his body, and he's just to get himself physically, mentally right, like it's like he barely has time to talk to me, let alone anyone. Like which is why he's such a gun player, because he works so hard.
We had one of my mates on from Muscle and Bone, Ilias. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw that.
Yeah, and he was talking about Clary, how much Clary always goes in away from the club and gets so much treatment, which obviously goes to show the type of person that he is and how committed he is to everything.
Yeah.
Putting us into, and knowing every situation's different, but in your particular industry, I'm a player. Now imagine, guys, I'm probably about 30 kgs lighter as well, yeah? So take it easy, but I'm a player and I'm going to go Richmond. If I'm not at Richmond, I'd want to be at GWS, just off the topic, right? But I'm at Richmond and I've got a year to go on my contract. How early are you starting negotiating with the club to see whether they still want me or not?
It's a good question. Like, I mean, it obviously depends on the player. So we'd have a bit of a gut feel early in the year, and that's just based on.
So I'm not Tom Lynch and Cooking Coleman's. I'm sort of I'm a bit of a fringe on thereabouts.
I've got 7 or 8 of these players now, and players that are playing regular senior footy every week. So I think I spoke to you before about an Alex Witherden or a Ryan Clark at Sydney, who's just a gun tagger, that plays every week, but he's still out of contract, and Witherden's played every game at West Coast and has been a really consistent player.
I'm half a chance at West Coast the way I am at the moment.
So, it's like probably once every 2 or 3 weeks, just trying to get a bit of a feel from their list manager. Like it's not even halfway through the year. So, which can be frustrating for players. Like I spoke to Alex last night and he's out of contract. He's in Perth, his family's in Geelong. He's trying to sort of work out what my future holds. And and one of the hardest parts of my job is I don't really have an answer for him that he wants.
Yeah,
it's like, and it's, mate, you're going well, just keep focusing on your game and playing your role. And that hopefully leads to another contract. But there's no certainty around it because every club situation is different.
It's very real for these players. Yeah. I mean, I imagine myself that, and I'm a stress head as it is and everybody knows it, but if I don't know what I'm going to be doing next year work-wise or how I'm going to be getting bread, I imagine it's a lot of pressure to have.
It's tough. Like I met Fletch back in the day at the Rosstown in Carnegie.
Fletch, dog, why don't you sign with him?
I had a few like Lin Jong and I've got a player that played in a premiership with Fletch who's similar. Like,
was Jongy yours?
Yeah, I had Jongy. Yeah, great. Like great story.
Mate, they're great footy club boys.
Jongy and I it was an interesting he had a great career.
I love Jongy.
He was the biggest wild card draftee ever. I remember watching him in the grand final that they lost. I think Sandringham beat them, and
Fletch kicked 4 in the last quarter.
Jongy was 6'2" playing in the ruck, you know what I mean, and dominating. And then the Bulldogs took a chance on him, and he ended up playing great footy, and unfortunately missed that grand final. But the week before, he was best on ground in the VFL and just played so well. Like he was so stiff not to be a part of that grand final team. But I've got a player that played in that grand final that's still on the Bulldogs list, and he's been such a good player, but been through so many injuries. He's got 2 properties, and it's like, it's tough. He's out of contract. It's really tough. It's, you've been on an AFL list for 8 years. You're coming up. There's no guarantee that you're going to get another year. Hopefully he does. He should, but there's no guarantees, and it's tough. It's like, if I'm not playing AFL, what do I do? Like, how do I make money to keep, supporting my family, my partner? It's really hard.
I so agree with it. Like I've actually got so Jongy and Fletcher doing a combined 30th next weekend.
It'll be big.
By the time we release this, it might have already happened. But like those two are just like inseparable now. Those two, I would say that. Well, Jongy hasn't taken Dim's place, but he's probably pretty close. But it's only because they live on the other side of town still. Yeah. But he was a Murrumbina lad, and Jongy obviously, I think he was from Glen Waverley. But he was a rarity. I mean, he was awesome. But I sort of saw what these guys were going through with their ups and their downs, and sort of back then I was an avid Bulldogs fan, so everything was Bulldogs for me. And it was great because I got to experience the inner sanctum, like grand final day when they won the grand final. I'm in the rooms on grand final day afterwards, like having beers with Chris Hemsworth, full fangirling like a champion. I was so excited. But it's you do see it, and it's very, very real that a lot of people just think, oh, mate, they're AFL players, they're bulletproof. It is so not true.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like even the stars have doubts. They have patches where they form because of injuries and whatever. Just patches. They might be getting tagged and new role, whatever. Like it's not the glamorous sort of life but even like you sign a bigger contract, there's more pressure, there's more scrutiny, there's more media, there's more people wanting to pot you when you're not at your best. Like it's a tough game. It's a physical game.
Is that something that you think the AFL or in general, maybe you guys are like, I think you guys for your draftees, I could be wrong, were doing a like training session. I remember that was happening
before the draft.
Yeah. Is that something that you think every year something's getting better at? So whether it be getting these guys together at, and learning each other and not just looking at each other like they play for Richmond and he plays for Brisbane. It's like, no, we're all under the CSM umbrella.
Well, we are in a way. I mean, we have a training camp over summer down at Sorrento where we get our players together. At the end of the day, it's a bit of a, like, because they're managed by CSM, a lot of the kids would have played with and against each other. They become friends with each other. We've got players that are mates that are drafted at different clubs. So, like even this afternoon, I've got a young player going through this year's draft who's catching up with Harry Sheasel, who you spoke about before, he plays at the Dragons. So just picking his brain on, the national champs are coming up. What do I expect?
And you're present at that meeting as well?
Yeah, just to like facilitate or just like ask a few questions or just be there to support. But, how do I go about the club interviews? What do you eat before a game? Just little things, because like this young player looks up to someone like Harry that's doing such great things, just getting a bit of advice and tips and, how do I handle the rest of the year? How do I deal with the pressure? Like, how do I perform at my best, for the next 4 to 6 weeks when I have to during the champs to give myself the best chance to be drafted.
I love that those like players like that are open to doing things like that.
Like Paul could ring if we had a player that wanted some help, like Paul could ring Toby Green today and say, hey, would you mind having a quick chat to this player? Like the players are awesome. They're so giving of their time. They remember what it was like when they were going through too. So they've sort of never forgotten where they were, where they started.
They've had the humble climb.
They have.
They've had the humble climb. You've got now you've got some pretty big players coming through in this year's draft. Harley Reid, Nick Watson, Colby McKirchen. McKircher.
Yeah.
So Tassie lad as well.
Yep.
So you potentially have the top three.
Oh, geez, that would be nice. I mean, they're all good players.
Yeah.
I mean, they should all be around the mark somewhere, but there's still a long way to go. But they're shaping up okay.
Have you seen a bigger? I struggle to see a bigger media. I would say media storm about about Harley Reid for a potential pick one. I haven't seen it about this pick one hype in a long time. Is this one of the biggest you've seen as well?
Without pumping it up, it is, and it's probably too crazy to be honest.
Yeah.
Like,
well, because I've never watched it, but what position does he actually play?
He's a bit of a utility, so he can obviously play midfield.
Yeah, that's what they call me as well, utility.
Yeah, he played. He plays forward. He can kick goals. He can mark it. I think he grew up playing as a forward. Okay. He's got the sort of size and speed and I guess power to play through the midfield, a bit like a Dusty. Like he's got that. Yeah. That clearance work, that fend off. But then last year they chucked him back for Vic Country as a bottom age player. He'd never played back, and all of a sudden he's playing back and dominating. He's
Darcy Moore intercepting marks.
Yeah, it's like so. That's probably what makes him a little bit different. To like I remember watching guys like Sam Walsh and Lockie Whitfield go through, who are just these gun mids. Like Harley's a bit different. He's a bit of a unicorn in that regard. And
well, he already looks marketable with the long hair and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's more the way that he plays. Yeah. And like he's got this amazing just confidence, like on field, like off the field, he's the nicest kid, country kid, down to earth. But then on the field, he steps over that white line and he's just got this oozes confidence and just It's great. It's actually really refreshing to watch. Yeah.
So someone like, and it doesn't have to be Harley Reid, but let's just say you've got someone that's going in the top 10, hypothetically, and they're really rated. How earlier on, before their actual AFL journey commences, are you talking to their parents and getting meetings?
Yeah, so there's a fair way out because obviously our industry, there's a lot of agents and it's competitive, but there's also a set of rules that regulate when we can talk to the players.
Right.
So for us, it's in the under 16, so 2 years out from their draft, there's a national champs.
Is that 16 champs?
Yeah, so up a couple of months after the 16s champs, they can be approached by agents. They can start meeting, talking, having communication with agents. And then for a lot of the really, really good ones, like the ones that are identified as being pretty elite for their age, they can select an agent probably 18 months out from their draft. And one of the reasons is just to knock it on the head because it does become a bit of a distraction. So, and then also just to put it to bed, concentrate on footy, actually working on their game and getting on with their school. And
I remember when I tried to, when I was doing the work experience, and again when we tried, and it was the cards were always stacked against us just based on a lot of the bigger names, but you had to go through the team manager of their club of say Sandy Dragons or Oakley Chargers. Is that a lot of it still the case nowadays?
It's the same process. You send a letter in to the parents and the player. It gets sort of filtered through this portal. Then it gets spat out to the parents or the player. Then you make contact, and then from there, it's like it's more regulated. So the parents are across it. So a lot of the time you meet with the player and the parents for the initial meeting at the same time because they're young. They're 16. Like they're still young people.
And are you guys physically are you guys getting hot tips as a manager, or are these players that you physically have to source yourselves?
No. Like every now and again, you get a tip. You get a tip from a club, and they're probably not the real pointy end, high end talent kids. It's probably more there might be a kid from the bush or a kid from SA that, or a kid from Tassie that no one's really seen much of yet. Yeah, like the elite players stand out, so that the best of the best, everyone can see them. Because even from the under 15s and even before that, everyone knows who they're going to be. But in saying that, there's a big change from under 16s to under 18s. So the only balancing act of what we do is you can sign a kid who's 16 years old who's a star, then 2 years later he hasn't grown or he's had injuries, or like Tyler Sonsi at under 16s, who's a Richmond player, was a gun. He was the best kid in Australia at the under 16s. Then he had a back injury. His bottom age year he was COVID, so that was a wipeout. His top age year he had all these injuries, so he slid to pick 28 in the draft. But at under 16s he was one of the best kids you'll ever see. Okay. So, but that doesn't mean that he won't go on and have a great career. It just shows that a lot can change in those 2 years.
100%. Yep. 100%. I love hearing that. Because that was one of always the tougher things, again, that, when you're, I guess that approach, because if you're a 16-year-old and all of a sudden you're being looked at managed, it's managing that. And as a kid, like, mate, if I was 16 and I was going to have a manager, mate, I would make sure everybody wants to know it, because that would be like maybe walking down Oakley's Mall, mate, like with a sign saying "Talk to my manager." So it's awesome. And again, we're always conscious of your time, mate. So I can't thank you enough. But has there been a sort of a real difficult situation that you've encountered, might be hypothetically, with a player of yours, say, you're trying to get a trade done during trade week and it doesn't quite happen, and then it's the after effect? I mean, is that one of the more tougher things for you?
Trade period's hard, and most of the time you end up getting it done, but there has been a couple of occasions where you don't, and that's because the player might be contracted, and as much as the player wants to move, ultimately, unless the club that he's at agrees to it, they can't go anywhere. So there has been, like in 15 years, there's been a couple where it hasn't got done, but it's also managing the expectations of the player to say, hey, we'll have a crack at this, but there's not, there's no guarantees that we'll get it done. Like you hope and you want to, and you push to get it done. So that's disappointing. But at the end of the day, the players go back to their clubs. They're fine. Like they've got friends there. They've got another year left on their contract.
And there's reasons behind why they want to move. It might be family or whatever.
A lot of the time it's homesick or opportunity. Like probably the two or three reasons why players move is like money's one of them, but ultimately it's probably third down the line. It's opportunity. Yeah. It's family. So I've been drafted into state. I've got, mum and dad at home, partner at home, friends at home, and then money comes into it as well. But money's never the deciding never the deciding factor. Like it's considered, but there's other reasons why players move.
It's a bit like I guess when Jerry Finlayson wanted to leave, I can't remember if it was still contract.
Like I've had players that have taken a pay cut just because sometimes you have to go back to relaunch your career.
Yeah, I mean those two at the moment, Kelly and Jerry's, they inspire me, man.
Awesome story. And he's playing such good footy, and
they just inspire me. Like how, mate, honestly, I tear up when listening to her talk.
Yeah.
She's amazing. So, a serious, and again, I know she doesn't watch this, but she's incredible. Yeah. She's just amazing the way she does it. Both of them, and even Brad Hill. I mean, there's another one. Not Brad Hill. Bobby Hill. Sorry.
Yeah.
Even little Bobby, testicular cancer.
Yep.
And then touch wood and comes back and where he's doing now with the footy. I love those stories. Yeah. I'm just a sucker for them every single time. The more we get of them, the better. And mate, last one to finish with before we go into the humble three. What does the future look like for Nick Gieschen?
I mean, I'm really established where I am, so I think I'll continue to give my best to CSM and my players and continue to hopefully grow and evolve and get better at what I'm doing. As you said before, I've got two little boys that, one of them's nearly 6 and the other one's nearly 4. So they're footy nuts now. So one started school. So, hopefully be the best dad I can be, do the best job that I can do, be a good partner and just be the best.
I love
it. Be the best person I can be.
I love it. And obviously you'll continue to let your boys know, your footy boys know, mate, that if when the time comes to buy and sell, who they'll be calling.
No, I must admit, like that process was because after I missed your house, which I wanted, but I got straight onto the one in Oakley that I've got now, and Charlie, mate, what a gun he is.
Mate, don't worry about Charlie. No, Charlie's a guy. Charlie's a guy.
Like I remember through that process, you were ringing me and you were helping me a lot too.
We like to help our parents.
I felt like you guys were the auction barracking for me.
We're the tag team, so at least we know when the time comes to sell, mate. We know where it's coming. Mate, the Humble 3 brought to you by obviously Bonds of Snowballs. As I said, they're amazing. They're fantastic. There was more of them, but the girls in the office absolutely demolished them.
Paul Connors, mate, is a sucker for sugar. He will.
Oh, mate, then off you go. These. Mate, you take them to Paul and I'll get some dropped off to your place for the little ones as well, mate, just to keep you active. But yeah, mate, Bonds of Snowballs. So get on them, check out their Instagram. They're doing amazing things. And as I said, for that little sugar pick me up in the Arvo, they're absolutely amazing. But the Humble 3 that we like to always finish on. If you weren't doing your current occupation, what you do, what do you think you'd be doing?
Mate, I honestly have no idea. It might still be at Mazda or I'd like to think something in sport just because it's my hobby. I could see you as a physio or something. Yeah. Maybe I'd come and work for you guys.
Yeah, mate, I love it, mate. I can see you as a real estate. Well, it's good. Is there anyone in particular that inspires you outside of your family?
Oh, put me on the spot here. I look up to probably sporting because it's what I know, but I look up to sporting, champions and idols and just the guys that have a crack in longevity and work hard, like all that sort of stuff. So there's probably no one in particular, but I really respect watching how the champs go about their work.
I love that. Just off topic, is there someone there like from a sporting player that you've managed and may not be still in the maybe still be in playing AFL now or maybe has retired, etc., or delisted? Is there someone out of your stable that you've personally had that really made an impact on you as a person?
Yeah, no doubt there would be. Just trying to think if there's anyone specific that there would be, and players go through ups and downs, and just to see like Gary Rowan, for example, right? So he had 7 or 8 years in Sydney, and then he went through some downs, some games, some moments in finals where he had some great finals, and then the role that he plays is hard, and there were games where he had low impact, but to see what he did in that preliminary final last year against Collingwood, where he kicked 2, then all of a sudden takes a huge pack mark with a minute left, goes back and goes bang and puts Geelong in the grand final. Like for me, that was like I jumped off my chair, like just because I know the journey that he's had and the self-doubt and the, you know what I mean? So that was just the best moment. And and then to see him go on and win the grand final the week after.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden he's a premiership player and
he's gone through adversity as well. You know, like he's played out publicly and whatnot.
And he's just he's a country kid and he's a great guy. And I was so just pleased for him and his family, and because I know what he's been through, and just to silence the critics. He's such a mate. Everyone in Australia would have been watching that game, and to do it the way that he did it was awesome.
100%. Last one that we always like to finish on is if you could have a billboard, what would it say and why?
Oh, geez. It's a good question.
Could be a little quote or something, hypothetically.
Honestly, just have a crack. Sort of thing.
Love that.
Just have a crack and give it your best. I think
we'll go have a crack in Dandenong Road above KFC billboard or something.
I was out in Frankston the last 2 weekends watching footy, so maybe chuck it up there.
Chuck it in Frankston. Yeah, I love it, mate. Ladies, gents, there's a reason I wanted to bring this guy on because he's awesome. He's a quiet achiever, I would say. So, and he deserves to be not recognised, but deserves the airtime, and I can't thank him enough for being a great friend, and more importantly, just being a really good person. And he strives, and he's continuing to strive to make impacts in his industry. It's AFL. It's something that we watch. Well, they should be doing it more Thursday to Sunday. That's another bee in my bonnet. Make Thursday nights a fixture permanently. But anyway, I'll get onto that another time, Giesch. But he's just a legend, and he's got an amazing stable. They're doing great things at obviously CSM, or they've been doing things for such a long time at Connor Sports Management. Awesome for a period of time, and there's a reason why he's regarded as probably one of the best in the business. So, Giesch, can't thank you enough, mate. You're a gentleman.
Thanks for having me,
mate.
Appreciate it.
Anytime you want to come down to Buxton for kick around the footies or something, mate, or
get a coffee.
We'll get a coffee and vanilla, Melissa, Nichols, wherever you want, mate. So, mate, you're a legend. Can't thank you enough, guys. Continue, if more importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everything else. Huge thanks again to the sponsors. We'll be having them all in the little banner below so you guys can see them, and we'll continue to bring you more and more good episodes. Cheers.